Hello internet friends, and welcome to the Legion Second Pass look at the new, very reformed, minigame wielding Shadow Priest in Legion. Now, there is a lot of math involved with like the Insanity mechanic, which is your new resource. You no longer use mana, Shadow Orbs are gone, Shadow Form as a whole is gone. You are visibly Shadow Form all the time, which does get darker and crazier as you go deeper, as well as when you go into Voidform, as well as when you do Surrender to Madness, for example. But the Shadow Form effect is gone, Devouring Plague is gone, a whole bunch of things. Of course, check the channel description box below for links to all the bugs we have found that are still prevalent, all of the notes that I have, as well as some weak auras from Twin Top that he made that actually have like a timer bar that shows you like how long you have left in Voidform or before you go, you know, of Insanity, all this kind of stuff. Really good resources there. Of course, you can find Twin Top on Twitter and go through all of the other resources he has been putting out and putting together for the Shadow Priest. But the biggest changes to Shadow Priest are just how it fundamentally plays with this builder pseudo-spender bar, where like, for example, a Balanced Druid or Enhanced Shaman builds Maelstrom and spends Maelstrom. You build Insanity through certain spells and casting, and then you can utilize that to empower yourself as a Voidform, which consumes your Insanity and increases your damage, and by the more longer your damage by more, the longer it's active. That was weird. It requires 100 Insanity to activate. So you go into this Voidform now, and you do more damage, and it drains over time. But the longer you can keep building Insanity, the longer you stay in this form. So it is pretty awesome. Thematically, it feels very cool. There are some talents I'll kind of like glaze over later because they're not that good right now. But of course, numbers and everything is being tuned currently. So that will, of course, come in time. And these damn action bars. How many videos are they going to forget to turn those off? That should be a drinking game. No, don't do that. Or, you know, it's your liver, not mine. Anyway, passives. Then we'll go through your artifact weapon. And then we'll go through your talents. So, your only two passives you have are Shadowy Apparitions. When you cast Shadowed Pain on targets, the damage over time, critical strikes of Shadowed Pain will also create a shadowy version of yourself that floats towards the target and deals some shadow damage. So Shadowy Apparitions is your crit synergy over the course of time, of course. Over the course of time, of course. But a lot of talking today. But then they go, they fly off there. They look like they're wearing like Black Temple gear. Is that just me? Looks like a Black Temple gear. Looks like Absolution. It's kind of like Absolution. I don't know. I could be totally wrong there. But see, as you gain more and more Insanity here real quick, I will show you the cosmetic effect. You will notice that your character does become more and more shadowy. It's very kind of subtle, but you get more effects around your feet. You get a little bit crazier there, a little more and more. It's like how dark your character is now. It's so neat. Oh, it's so neat. And when you go Voidform, which to go click off your mastery, which has been changed like 900 bazillion times over the course of Shadow Priest's existence as a class. Now it increases your damage done by Shadowed Pain and Vampiric Touch, and then also Void Bolt by an amount. And what am I healing right now? Am I healing that guy with my... What that healing spam? Oh, it's the damage trying to come off this guy. It's so weird. But anyway, this is Max Insanity Voidform. This is the darkness you get to, and then when you cast Voidform, which is right here, you activate Voidform, you increase all damage you deal by 30%, reducing the cooldown of Mind Blast by 3%, granting you 1% additional haste every 1 second. Insanity will drain increasingly fast until it reaches 0 and Voidform ends. When Voidform ends, you gain Lingering Insanity, which allows the haste bonus you earned during Voidform to persist for 1 minute, but you don't have the damage bonus anymore, of course. And they have to have 100 Insanity to activate the form. Earlier on in my initial pass of the class, which you can check on my channel guide, all my other testing, again, video description box below. My nose itches. Stop thinking about me, YouTube comments in the future. But, you used to automatically go into Voidform, which was bad. Now you actually have to blammo. You toggle it on. And then this is the Voidform effect on your character the whole time you're here. And there is a extra effect if you use Surrender to Madness, which I'll show later on in this video. But, so you're wondering, like, haste has a huge benefit. There's more tentacles that spawn from you the deeper you go in there, with some little bit of nastiness going on. But alright. So, Voidform and how much haste you do gain as Shadow brought up some interesting talking points during testing. Where I was like, okay, what kind of stat priority are you looking at here, right? So, based on the current value, some talents do change this priority, but actually your most beneficial stat is going to be Mastery, and then you want Haste, which is greater than or equal to Crit. Now, Haste up to 50% will give you a, if you are a 1.5 second global cooldown, will give you a 1 second global cooldown. So that means that all the time, if you're ever at 50% haste on your paper doll, which is your character sheet right here, right? That means you would have a 1.5 second global will be reduced to a 1 second global. But in Voidform, actually, you can go to a 0.66 global cooldown for the Shadow Priest in Voidform. Which means that by Twin Top's math, apparently he told me, you'll need 122% haste in total. So, haste is still a really good stat overall because it makes your dots tick faster, makes your Mind Flay tick faster, reduces the global cooldown, reduces the recharge time on some abilities. So, you don't need a certain breakpoint, but up to 50% haste on your character is not devalued because you're not always in Voidform, but it also helps you when you're not in Voidform. And then when you're in Voidform, you can only get better, because you can stack 72% more haste through Lingering Insanity, which would take you 72 seconds of being in the form, which is not, you can't do that without Surrender to Madness, by the way, is that you just get more, you get faster and faster and faster and faster, your dots tick faster, it's crazy. Like, it actually is a little bit insane how the rotation gets just so GCD locked and so, like, spastic, you have to keep up and you have to fight it and fight it and fight it. This character sheet you're seeing here, the Paper Doll upgrade, is a add-on linked below as well. So, that's what Voidform does. That is your build up to, and then activate, and then go ham, egg, and cheese sandwiches, right? So, otherwise than that, before we go into all the DPS buttons, utility-wise, you still have Vampiric Embrace. 3-minute cooldown would you fill you with the Embrace of Shadow Energy for 15 seconds, causing you to heal a nearby ally. It only works on a nearby ally. It says nearby, which usually means like 8 yards. I was told it's like 40. For 40% of any single target shadow spell damage you deal. So dot damage, casting, Mind Flay, or Void Bolt, or Mind Blast, all of that stuff, single target wise. If you are the only one around, it'll heal you, which is fine. Like, it'll heal you during the duration of all this kind of stuff. But if you are in a raid setting, it's a smart heal, so it will heal the most injured nearby ally around you every time that it would, like, tick, right? Every time you would, like, cast a Mind Blast or whatever, it would find the target to heal. It's not great. It's not terrible, but it's not like, knocking your socks off, right? It's okay, but it's just not fantastic. You have Silence, which is your 5-second prevention of spells being cast, as well as against non-players. It will be an interrupt as well. 3-second spell lockout, 45-second cooldown. You do have Shadow Mend, which is new. So Shadow Mend on yourself is just a heal. So it costs mana. Shadow Priests have mana to utilize for their utility spells, like this and others, which we'll see soon. And mana is a limiting factor on those those heal effects, right? You can't just spend them all day. But Shadow Mend is a relatively okay spellable heal for the most part. And on you, it just heals you. But if you heal an ally with it, what happens is that a dot appears on the target, which will deal damage to them until half of the heal has been dealt back in damage. It won't show up real quick on this dummy. I can go heal this grunt over here. And what happens is that whatever you heal them for, there's a dot that deals damage to them for half of the damage, and it does damage like 4,300 per second until 43,000 damage has been dealt. But that only works on other allies, right? But it doesn't mean that this dot has to do the damage. If you're healing a tank or someone else, and they take damage from a dot or an environmental effect or a boss slaps them in the face, as long as that 43,000 or whatever damage has been dealt by something, it will remove this Shadow Mend debuff. But for the most part, it gives you a little bit of synergy to actually heal a little bit as a Shadow Priest, but not a lot, obviously. But you can definitely keep yourself alive because you are embracing the Shadow and healing the crap out of yourself. But you don't get the dot on you anymore. There was some weird shenanigans earlier in the build that I remember, like, that you could eventually just get to a point where Shadow Mend could be spammed to a point that you keep the same Shadow Mend debuff up, but after it removed that effect, you could just keep spamming it forever and ever and ever and ever and ever before you had mana back again, and there would be no damage being dealt to you. You were basically immortal, unless you get stunned or interrupted. So they've definitely fixed that with the mana cost thing and just removed the whole nonsense that hurts the Shadow Priest, because it's your heal, right? You still have Shackle Undead, which can shackle undead. I know, right? Resurrection, which is a single target res. You still have a, you are a Shadow Priest, so you still have a Priest other off spec, so you still have a res. Purify Disease removes all disease effects from a friendly target. If you do remove a disease, it will put it on an 8-second cooldown. Costs mana. Psychic Scream costs mana, your AoE Fear. It's a disorient effect, so it can break on damage, of course. Powered Shield costs mana, cooldown reduced by haste. I have a talent right now that gives me the little sprint there. But there's no more Weakened Soul debuff, so it's just a cooldown. You can't stack Powered Shields, Body and Soul. You can't stack Powered Shields anymore, it just refreshes the duration. But it prevents spell pushback from damage, and it absorbs some damage, right? But you can have Eurobone Powered Shield and like a Dispriest Powered Shield on you at the exact same time. There's no, mutually exclusive nonsense anymore. It's just Powered Shield. But Powered Shield overall, absorb-wise, is very, very weak compared to what it feels like right now. You have Mind Vision, which you can still vision the minds of others when you could go really far away from your body and look at stuff, and you can scope out, the flag capture point in Battlegrounds or, whatever have you. Mind Vision's still here. You have Mind Control, which actually has a whole bit more, which I'll go into when I go to talents, but you control the mind of up to one level above yours. Costs some mana, little short of a cooldown, 30-yard range, short 1.8, 1.68 cast time. I'm sorry. It was like 5 hours of testing. My brain is all over the place right now. Again, see, I'm going insane a little bit. Little bit. If I edited these videos, I'd make my head spin around in post, but I'm not doing that. So, up to one level above yours can be mind controlled. Anything but mechanical targets. And the spell shares diminishing returns with other disorienting effects, however, for PvP purposes and whatnot. So, you cannot do it on players, and you cannot do it on mechanical things. I will go over here real quick to this talent called Dominant Mind, which makes your, whatever you control, your pet. There is a back and forth right now that if you actually have a dominated, mind-controlled crab or Mushan or whatever, demon, which is, overall, mind control is fantastic for leveling. It is ridiculous with Dominate Mind for, like, dungeons and leveling. And we don't know how it can work on, like, PvP pets for players. I'm assuming it won't work, though. But if you take the upgraded version of it, this cannot be used against players. If you don't take the improved version of it, you can use against players, but it makes you control them. And, of course, it's a disorient effect, so it has diminishing returns in PvP, and you can't control yourself. And if yourself gets interrupted or stunned or whatever have you, knocked back, it stops a channeled spell, then you will break it as well. But for everything else, you can dominate anything. For questing purposes or dungeons, it's a CC that makes it do damage. And it becomes your pet. It's so good. It's really cool that it has, like, so few restrictions now because it's just like a void mind control thing. It's wild. It's pretty neat. But I will show you what it looks like to go mind control a crab real quick, and we'll bring back Philip to come over here with us. I'll have to then murder Philip, sadly. But we'll see. But you can see, like, usually, like, only humanoids and whatever. No, I'm gonna grab this crab right here. What's up? What's up, crab? You are now my dog, my crab. There's obviously the countdown when you're in combat there, but there's your crab pet. It can be a demon, it can be a whatever. Go, crab pet, go. Of course, it uses the same abilities that you would use for, controlling a pet. Control 1 by default is the auto attack. You see the duration of the mind control right there. And there he goes. He's smacking things. Go, Philip, go! Yeah! Of course, it will break soon. Oh, I'll show you this real quick, though. If you summon your own pet, it will break the mind control. So there is my Shadow Fiend, which I summoned, and now it breaks the mind control. And now Philip wants to murder me. No, Philip, don't do it! You have so much to live for. My art weapon's not on right now. My damage is kind of low. Don't do it, Philip. Powered shield, save me. My Shadow Fiend did, like, no damage. And we're gonna go Voidform, and we'll kill you, Philip. I'm so sorry, Philip. Goodbye. Soon, anyway. My damage is so low without my artifact on. It's, like, noticeably bad. But I can show you animations off when I'm doing this. Ow, Philip, please! Goodness me. Anyway. And there we go. Blamity blamity blam. Use all my mana to heal me up, and bloop, almost there. That's mind control. It is a lot of fun. And it received a ton of love in Legion for you Shadow Priest, so enjoy that. Master Spell, cost a ton of mana, a very short cast time. It can remove bubbles. It will remove all harmful magic from 10 friendly targets, and 1 beneficial magic from 10 enemy targets, and potent enough to remove magic that is not normally dispellable. So, ton of mana, Master Spell. Levitate, levitates you. Slow Fall, as well as walking over water. You have Fade, which removes all of your threat, which will be good for Keystone Dungeons for, like, skittish mobs that drop threat a lot. And other than that, it doesn't really have a whole lot of options anymore. This is all it does. Just your Fade, you're removing all your threat. Dispersion has been changed a couple times, so let me go over Dispel Magic. It's just your offensive Dispel. If you remove a beneficial magic effect from an enemy, it costs you a bunch of mana. That's all it does. There's no cooldown on Dispel Magic, but of course it's you only have so many spells in you because it costs a lot of mana. Dispersion now is a 6-second duration, 2-minute cooldown that reduces all damage you take by 60%. But you are able to cast this, you are unable to attack or cast spells, castable while stunned, feared, or silenced. And what happens here is that when you're in Void form and you disperse, it will not drain insanity. So there actually is a little bit of micromanagement in this that you could use it to stay in Void form longer by delaying the insanity drain, which allows your dots to tick faster, or allow like your Mind Bender to give you more insanity, for example. It's a couple of options for that. It's not like a lot, but it's there. The most reason why this is that tagged on there now is because when you're in Void form and have to use your defensive cooldown, you're not suddenly at a loss of 6 seconds and probably dropping you out of Void form. It stops the insanity drain. So it's a quality of life improvement as well as a slight gameable-ish DPS increase, but not really, but kind of. But that all comes down to the fight mechanics at hand, so you'll see about that. But it looks the same. But you could actually cast while dispersed a couple builds ago, but that is now gone again, of course, for the insanity change. So that's all your other buttons. So your main buttons you're going to be hitting here. You saw Shadow Word Death go off there, which is a cooldown reduced by haste, 40-yard range, which is actually an execute. Very, very, very few classes have executes now. Fury and Arms Warrior do, Feral Druids, and now the Shadow Priest still remains to have your execute mechanic. Does shadow damage to the target, only usable on enemies that are less than 20% HP. Generates 10 insanity by default, or 30 if you kill the target. So not that great in a raid setting, unless you're killing the target with the hit of it, which is not going to probably happen very often. But it is a instant cast to generate on-demand insanity as well. Other things you're going to really care about all the time, of course, is putting up Vampiric Touch all the time. Short cast time, generates 4 insanity when it's actually cast. Does shadow damage over 18 seconds and heals the priest for half of the damage it deals. And if someone dispels VT, it will make the dispeller flee in horror for 3 seconds. Shadow Word Pain gives you 3 insanity on cast because it's an instant that deals some shadow damage and then a extra amount over 14 seconds. So VT, cast time, lasts longer, has a heal, more insanity. Shadowward Pain, of course, though, has the synergy with your Shadowy Apparitions. So that's why it has a little bit more of a really shorter window. Of course, you can pandemic this to last for 18 seconds. So it doesn't always last for 14 if you wanted to, like, ever double cast it for a little bit of extra time. But it's just rotational. Like, you'll refresh it all the time with your other dots, so it's not really a big deal. It also is, of course, your main dot you care about with VT. And again, of course, that's how your mastery works on Shadowward Pain and VT for scaling. And then Void Bolt, which you saw during that little bit there. But Void Bolt is only active during Voidform, where the cooldown is reduced by haste, as many things are. Generates 16 insanity on cast, where you send a bolt of pure void energy at the enemy, causing shadow damage and refreshing Shadowward Pain and VT to their original duration. This will make them go back to their full duration of 14 seconds or 18 seconds. But you can cast Void Bolt all the time. In Voidform, it is your #1 priority to always hit on cooldown. Next, of course, to Mind Blast, which is a cooldown reduced by haste as well. 9-second cooldown default. Very short cast time, generates 12 insanity when cast, and deals initial shadow damage. I put it in my notes that Mind Blast still has no landing animation for some reason. Like, it just happens. Like, you hear, like, the noise, right? But nothing actually happens. There's no splash of magic off the target's head or anything like that. Nothing happens. So I hope they give you a little bit of something else with that. Apparently, the Shadow Priest has been devoid of a lot of spell effects for a very long time, considering that you put up 2 dots that you never see any of again. I would say I have Mind Flay to channel, but even Mind Flay's, like, particle effects are kind of a little bit bad. If you really zoom in here, they reek of old age as well. Could be good if they improve that a little bit. I mean, it looks better than it used to, for sure, but yeah, and then in Voidform, there's Void Bolt, which is an instant cast, just kind of flies out of you. Voidform while levitating looks so awesome. Do you see this? It's so good. Oh, man, it's so good. Shadow Priests are pretty great in Legions, from what I've heard so far. Again, a couple dead talents, but we'll get to that. Mind Flay is a channeled amount of insanity gain, 8 over the duration. So the Mind Flay ticks faster with your haste. Over the course of a full channel of 3 seconds, there are 4 ticks of Mind Flay, which will stack 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, the more haste you have, the faster it casts. I have a ton of haste right now for Lingering Insanity. Click that off. Go back to the ability. So 2.8 seconds, 3 seconds baseline, of course. But it ticks 1, 2, 3, and then once when it ends. 1, 2, 3, and once when it ends. So the more haste you have, the faster that happens. And that's your main rotation. You still have Mind Seer, which generates 6 insanity over the duration per target it hits. So it gains a lot of insanity when you're AoEing. There's a legendary piece of gear you can use that actually increases your, like, you can spread dots with your Mind Seer, which is not too bad. But Mind Seer is what it is. The Shadow Priest is very good at tunneling, is not very good at AoEing. It's supplemental. They're good at cross-dotting. They're not an AoE class by design, which is fine. It's refreshing to know that you kind of have strengths and weaknesses as a class. I mean, you have talents that can help your AoE. In Legion, there's even a legendary that can do it too, right? But that's not the main goal. The Shadow Priest is just really good at tunneling or 2 to 4 target cross-dotting. But because Voidform is very single target oriented, it's kind of hard to juggle that to care for it. So just be a king of single target. You're kind of like a ranged feral druid in that, like, priority sense where you just tunnel. And you're really good at tunneling. So Mind Seer is still Mind Seer. But only cooldown baseline, as you saw earlier with Shadow Fiend. It's a 3-minute cooldown where you summon a Shadowy Fiend to attack the target for 12 seconds. He just kind of spawns. I don't know what his name is. We'll call him Larry. Well, there's Larry the Shadow Fiend just slapping away. He does like this weird blink thing, the Shadow Crawl. You crawl through the shadows to the target enemy and you increase your shadow damage dealt. That's why you saw him like blink there or whatever. Just to help him get into combat immediately so he doesn't like walk over and waste time. But that's your only like baseline cooldown, I guess. It's just, that's it. So, but that's the basic kit. Everything else you see, of course, here is a talent that I couldn't get rid of because you can't respec talents on the beta servers. So now we'll put on your Xal'atath, Blade of the Black Empire, which has some really great skins, by the way. Let me put the book out real quick. So the book is the Secrets of the Void. Comes with it by default. It's cosmetic. Has some stats, of course, already. But it's not anything that's a dual-wielding effect. Obviously, it gives you everything when you click on the one weapon. But that is you can go to Wowhead to check out all of the different skins. There are 6 skins for every artifact, base plus 5. 2 are hidden, and we don't know how to unlock all of them, but it looks really great. Sadly, right now, the unlock you get from Xal'atath, you're gonna say like a really crazy void monster, because it's a freaking void dagger from the void, the nonsensical, like blessed and old god goopy goop. Yeah, Xal'atath has a mind of its own. Ignore its maddening whispers. Do not trust the lies it spins. Take from it what you need, but always remember that the dark presence in the blade is not your ally. Hold on, we got a badass over here. But, so what you get for putting on your artifact weapon is called Void Torrent. 1 minute cooldown. You raise your dagger into the sky. Currently, the animation is broken, sadly. But you actually do not have any interaction with your dagger anymore at all. You just channel Mind Flight. It looks cooler. But you channel a torrent of void energy into the target for a ton of shadow damage over 4 seconds. To note this, the channel is determined by your haste. So the more haste you have, it counts as a dot, basically. The more ticks during that 4 seconds can be gained. And I was told, Napkin Mathy, that every 25% haste, you'll gain another full tick of Void Torrent. So right now, based on your math, every tick is about 90-ish thousand damage. So if you have 25% more haste, you'll just add 90,000-ish damage into Void Torrent. But while channeling Void Torrent, Insanity does not drain. Requires Voidform. It is really strong for multiple reasons. Obviously because it's easier to utilize it with some cooldown rotational shenanigans to stay in Voidform longer. You always want to use it at the tail end of your Voidform. Like right before you're about to leave the Voidform, you want to use it when you have a ton of haste. So like if you open a fight with Heroism, for example, you will actually be using Void Torrent at the very end of Heroism if you're still in Void form, because you want it to have as much compounded haste as possible, because again, the more haste you have, the more ticks in that channeled dot you get. Let's just go into Void form real quick here, and we'll just show off a little example of what it looks like. You can ignore the other things you're seeing right now, but that is part of being a Shadow Priest. We'll go over all those very soon, do not worry. So I'm going to cast this and then cast Void Torrent. And I'm at again. So like it delays your insanity your gauge on insanity, and it holds it there, and you do a ton of damage. So Void Torrent right there ticked 5 times. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. So the more haste you have, the more torrents you get. Right there, I had 31% haste baseline, so 22% here. So I had 1 extra tick, right? But it's pretty insane how much damage you can put out during this Void Torrent. Also, the tooltip doesn't take into account that you have 30% more damage dealt during Void form. So right now, it's a little higher than the actual math amount, I believe. Unless it might actually take in the 30% of damage in case it does. It may indeed. That's a mathy question that I can't always answer. So you guys can figure that out, of course, if you read those forums and read those gigantic math posts that probably Twin Top and Hasper working on. Anyway, that's Void Torrent. It's really good. And gaining it properly is part of the new skill cap involved in the Shadow Priest. What else we got here? We have Void Siphon. 20% more damage dealt by Mind Flay. You saw this buff pop. Increases the damage of your Mind Seer by 15%. This little helix pattern is part of this, which is weird. I feel like these should be flopped back and forth because this is the icon that gives you Mental Fortitude. So Mental Fortitude is that you're healing from your Vampiric Touch will actually give you a shield, which cannot be more than, I was told it's like 8% of your HP or something. So as your VT does damage, and if you cross dot on multiple targets, you will gain a shield faster. You stack Mental Fortitude, which gives you a shield. Which is fine, it's good. It's just always going to be up all the time. It's helping reduce damage. Every single spec in the game has some way to reduce damage or some DR or synergy baseline built into your artifact, and that is the Shadow Priest one, which is kind of thematic, right? You do damage, you're healing yourself from Vampiric Touch, and adding a little bit of a shield on yourself as well. You have Thoughts of Insanity, increases the healing done by Shadow Men by 30%, which on yourself is a little ridiculous. It's very powerful. It's another self-healing or preservation-oriented thing between Mental Fortitude and Thoughts of Insanity. Touch of Darkness is 50% more damage done by Vampiric Touch, so that would mean that the shield cannot stack any higher, but that means that each tick of VT, because this is a percentage-based thing, right there, the shield that you get from the healing, it ticks for more, so the shield would stack faster, right? In faster intervals, but it would never stack higher than the amount allowed by Mental Fortitude, but still good. Unleash the Shadows is that now Vampiric Touch critical strikes have a 45% chance to create a shadowy apparition. So your VT has to crit and then basically multi-strike to give you a apparition. So it's a crit as a 45% chance. So it like rarely ever happens. Of course, that's why haste and crit are kind of equal, because not only do you gain apparitions, there it goes. You gain apparitions from Shattered Pain default, you can then gain some from VT as well, at a reduced rate. You have To the Pain, which is 18% more damage dealt by Shattered Pain. Creeping Shadows is a recent that has replaced a perk for your fear. I forgot what it's called. Your single target fear that costs insanity, which has been removed. I can't remember what it's called now. It's your other version of fear that was like a ranged stun, which is just gone now. So they gave you Creeping Shadows, which is 3% increased shadow damage dealt by everything. So it's like a 3% global mastery or a 3% versatility, I suppose, with just the damage component tacked on. It's fine, it's just more shadow damage, but because they removed that, oh, Psychic Horror, there it is. They removed Psychic Horror from the game, you had a dead perk, so they fixed that. Thrive in Shadows is Dispersion, heals you for 50% of your maximum health over the duration, which this is also ridiculous. The Shadow Priest has a lot of, excuse me, a lot of self-sustain. Got a frog in my throat there for a minute. So you have a lot of self-sustain, your VT heals you, you get a VT shield, you get a huge heal on Dispersion. You have a spellable heal that doesn't hurt you, that actually heals for even more. You have a Power Word shield. You're pretty resilient as the Shadow Priest overall, I think, which is, you know, it's pretty nice. Thematically, it makes sense. Like, you bend the void, and you still use Discipline magic, because you have a little touch of the light left in you, because you are utilizing the power of the void, but not succumbing to it, unless you take Surrender to Madness, right, of course. So, back to the spellbook here for the artifact. What else we got? We've got From the Shadows, rather, which reduces the cooldown of Dispersion by 30 seconds, which means Dispersion is now a 90-second cooldown. So it heals you for a ton, reduces your damage by a ton, stops your insanity drain for the whole 6 seconds you're in it, unless you cancel Aura Macro or whatever, and has a 90-second cooldown. Really good. Death's Embrace is 10% more damage on Shadow Word Death. Sinister Thought is 8% more damage on Void Bolt, which is basically just free mastery for Void Bolt, 8% of it, which is nuts. Void Bolt baseline with my current gear does less damage than Mind Blast, but Void Bolt does scale with your mastery, whereas Mind Blast does not. So eventually, as you gain gear, mastery being your priority stat, Void Bolt will do more and more and more and more and more damage. Then we have Mind Shattering, which increases the damage dealt by Mind Blurst by 15%, which is kind of why my spellbook right now has Mind Blast higher, just because that perk is pushing it over a little bit more because it's only 8%, right? But again, I have PvP gear on, I have all this versatility right now. If that was all into mastery, it would definitely swing the damage numbers, but numbers still being tuned, of course. Golden Dragons. I'm gonna go in order of the ones you're gonna level first, basically, based on current priority. There was some back and forth during chat about what should be first, but I trust Twin Top. So, Mass Hysteria. For every 1 second that you're in Voidform, it will increase the damage dealt by Shadowward Pain and Vampiric Touch by 2%, stacking until Voidform ends. The longer you're in Voidform, the more damage your dots do. The longer you're in Voidform, the more haste you gain. So the faster the dots tick and do more damage. So Voidform is a huge component, obviously, of the Shadow Priest. So I'm going to pop over here into Voidform. Mass Hysteria will be a passive. It's up there on the... It doesn't actually show up on the bar. I thought it did. We can see in the spellbook, though, that the damage is going up and up and up and up, I believe, on the Shadowward Pain. Oh, it's not on the damn target. Ugh, derp. It fell off because I wasn't putting it on there earlier. I had the spellbook blocking, so I wasn't seeing it. Well, that's because I'm a dum-dum, and I don't play a Shadow Priest. I'm just trying to help. But we'll get back into Shadow Form real quick here. I wonder if it puts it on the spells themselves, or if it puts it on the spell bar there. I'm actually not sure. I don't think I noticed it earlier, the Mass Hysteria buff. Let's see, one more time here. One more time with Feeling. We'll refresh our dots correctly, and then we'll go Voidform. So does it actually show up on the... No tooltip. Is the tooltip amount changing? Oh, the tooltip amount does change. Look at that. That's fancy pants. The tooltip amount actually does retroactively continue to change. That is nice. I didn't notice that earlier during testing. That's very nice. And then, of course, it should go back down now. Okay. Oh, wow. That is nice coding right there. When that coding is just right. I love that meme so much. I'm going to make a stupid emote for myself about that one. That's really good. So, Mass Hysteria. It's tons of free mastery the longer you stay in Voidform for your 2 major dots. Your next one up, which was the contentious point if this one's first or not, was the Call to the Void, which Mind Flay has a chance to spawn a Void Tentacle that channels Mind Flay at your target for 10 seconds. So this Mind Flay does more damage up front, but it only ticks every 1 second, not determined by haste. And it will do more damage in its window. Real quick here, you go to pet. It does like 20,000 damage a tick, but because it only channels once every second for 10 seconds, over the course of time, if you actually were to channel your 10 seconds of Mind Flay, you do more damage. Your Mind Flay ticks for less, but because you can get so many more ticks in 10 seconds, you still do more damage than the Void Tentacle, which I'm going to lovingly refer to as the Shadow Tentabro, even though I guess the Shadow Priests just call them Tentacle Bros, but I think the Tentabro sounds a little bit more classy. Has a little bit of that je ne sais quoi on it. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's good. It makes you look voidy with the next talent you'll get here, which is the last one you'll probably aim for, which is Sphere of Insanity, which is where all your Void Shadow Orbs went. Sphere of Insanity manifests for the duration of Voidform. Your Void Bolts, Mind Blasts, Mind Flays cause the Sphere to duplicate 5% of their damage to all enemies affected by your Shadowward Pain. So it has a bit of a cleave / AoE component, and you could take and use the legendary, which I'm not going to go into really, but this legendary that makes you spread VT and Shadowward Pain with a cast of Mind Seer. And then you could, of course, do your single target rotation with your Void Bolts, your Mind Blasts, and your Mind Flays. And then that damage, 5% of that damage will then also hit every target with Shadowward Pain on it, which is fine. Single target-wise, though, is just a free 5% additional damage amp to those 3 abilities, which is also not bad. But it's also, like, not as good as increasing your dots a ton or having the extra tentacle spawn. The math on Call to the Void is different, however, also, because a lot of other Golden Dragons that we've been talking about have, like, a 0.7 RPPM. So, like, less than once per minute will they proc. Golden Dragons either have like a passive all the way or an RPPM system. But Call to the Void, based on my notes here from Twin Top, was said that the Call to the Void Where is it? Right there. So, where is it? I can't even see where it is. So much stuff here. This actually can proc multiple times. It doesn't actually have a... It's like 1 plus your haste divided per minute. So actually, the more haste you gain... I can't remember where I put this on my damn notes. The more haste you gain, the more tentacles you can spawn. So as you gain and stay in Voidform longer and longer and longer, the RPPM system actually will increase because you're putting more haste into the formula. So you can find all the math about this kind of stuff elsewhere, not from me, right? All this math is well beyond my knowledge. But yeah, so you gain more and more and more over time. By default, you'll have like 1 a minute, right? Like there he is. But the more haste you gain from Voidform, the more little Void Tentacle Bros you can actually have. But it's pretty good. But it's very single target, obviously, because it only works off Mind Flay or Mind Spike. So whereas this one can be cross-dottable and just give you more and more damage over time. And this one is cleavable, AoEable a little bit, but meh. But that's the Xal'atath, Blade of the Black Empire, which has a lot of passives that are kind of just like, okay. But I think that the overall rotation for the Shadow Priest is kind of so... insane, not to be just punny on purpose. It does kind of have enough working for it that you don't need even more to worry about. So it's all good though. It looks pretty good to me. All right, talent-wise, Twist of Fate is still here, and there was a bit of like rumbling in chat when I brought this up because it's just so good. It's very gameable. So after damaging a target below 35% health, you'll deal 20% increased damage and 20% increased healing for 10 seconds. And any fight that has adds, you can just put a Shattered Pain on any of them, or a VT. And when that ad dies, or when it ticks underneath when it's dying, you'll gain Twist of Fate. So fights that have adds, you can constantly keep Twist of Fate rolling randomly, and it's just a flat 20% damage increase. But on fights that are very patchworky, where you can never really proc it until execute phase, it's not that great. So you have options a little bit, but Twist of Fate is just really powerful on a lot of encounters. You have Fortress of the Mind, which makes Mind Flay and Mind Blast deal 10% more damage all the time, and also generate 20% more insanity. This will also work with Mind Spike as well, which is a good set it and forget it. Like, it helps all the time. Whereas Twist of Fate is gameable, so if you don't want to work on gaming Twist of Fate, you can just take Fortress of the Mind. Or you can take what I enjoy, which is called Shadow Word Void. Shadow Word Void looks just like a Mind Blast, which hopefully it has an animation coming to it eventually. Twin Top wanted me to make sure you all know that the little circle here, which I thought was artistically fine, is a little bit off-center. It's like 4 pixels to the right, which I think looks artistically fine. But when you make a weak aura, and your text is in the middle of the weak aura frame, it's not lined up, and it may trigger some people. And some of you right now in the comments might be like, why'd you tell me it's off-center, my OCD? But it's... maybe they'll fix it. I told Twin Top, though, that if he told any of the developers, they'll just flip it around 180 degrees, so it'll be off-center on the other direction, just to spite him. But it is basically just a weaker, much weaker Mind Blast with charges, but it generates 25 insanity. Remember, Mind Blast only gives you 12. 25. 12. But obviously the damage has changed. And there's a 30-second recharge. There's nothing haste affected here. There's been some talk that maybe every time you cast a Shadow Word Void, it should snapshot your haste and reduce the cooldown during that charge's cooldown by your haste amount. Or you should just do a little more damage or something like that. But the way that Shadow Word Void works is that it is a way to get into Void form very quickly, because you can just spam it in a row and you get a ton of extra insanity. Or it's a way you can game trying to stay in Void form longer, because you can utilize them and rotate them in the rotation. You can get about 4 of them in a rotation if you use one really early. And then you also, if you're heroismed or whatever, bloodlusted, so you can actually stay in there longer because you have more base haste to get that rolling, get that insanity generation rolling faster sooner. But these are all like competitive to a degree, other than the fact that TOF is just really strong all the time, if you can game it. So it's up to you. I like Void for the snap insanity to get back into the Void form faster, or as a way to stay in Void form longer. But that's up to you, of course. Because Fortress of the Mind does the same thing as well, but it's just a passive. It has no, like, interactivity. It just always happens. So it's a good sort of choice, but it's up to you. Okay, we go to utility tiers real quick. We already went over Dominant Mind. Psychic Voice is just 30 seconds off Psychic Scream, so it makes a 30-second cooldown. Mind Bomb, however, replaces Psychic Scream and gives you a targeted, short duration debuff, and then it goes blurp. It's an AoE stun for 2 seconds within 0 yards, apparently. I'm assuming it should be 8 yards or 10. Probably 10. The 1 is just disappeared into the void. If the target dies, or after 2 seconds, the Mind Bomb explodes, AoE stunning them. It just gives you an extra version of CC, another CC tool that isn't a Fear. Because Fear could obviously break immediately upon damage. Whereas Mind Bomb gives you an actual guaranteed CC. It can be Dispel, it is a magic effect. But you have 2 seconds to dispel it before it goes blurp. So, Mania is that you move 1% faster for every 5 Insanity you have. So at max Insanity, you'll actually move 20% faster. Which is okay. It's not, like, it's weird because you're not always at max Insanity for very long. You obviously choose when to go into Void form, but you do gain the movement speed all the time. Which is fine. Body and Soul, however, is the flip-flop, where you actually have the little sprint upon a powered shield cast, which you can cast on yourself or other people. Again, there's no more weakened soul effect, so you can just kind of spam it, and you keep getting the sprint over and over again. On-demand sprint, plus the GCD you need to cast it, however, but it does give you, of course, the bubble to brunt some damage, so it depends on what you're doing. And Masochism just means that Shadow Mend on yourself, the damage over time effect, which does not apply to you, then becomes a hot. So actually, if you do Shadow Mend yourself, you do get a small heal over time. You have to actually have damage taken. I mean, punch this guy in the face. Yeah! Yeah! Rah! Okay, so if you now amend yourself, you will get a small hot. Yeah, see? Masochism does stack because the dot would stack, but damage taken would actually stack to a point. So you actually can stack the Masochism heal. But you can see up here in the corner, you do have a the heal amount. But there is like a cap on how much it can heal you, I believe. I want to say. Don't kill me though, bro. It hurts. Ouch. The cap, of course, is determined by the fact of how much you can actually spam because of your mana. But it's just extra healing. So you have extra healing, absorb plus movement, or passive movement speed based on your insanity. Those are your 2 utilitiers. Your next 4 are all about that sweet, sweet damage. So Voidlord is that your lingering insanity persists for 8 seconds after you exit Void form. Enter the next Void form. When you leave Void form, you get lingering insanity. But when you go into the next Void form, it goes away immediately. With Voidlord, it persists for 8 seconds, so it helps you speed back up the rotation when you go into your next form. Reaper of Souls is Shadow of Death, can be usable at 35% health, and always gives you Insanity as it would kill the target. So this works really well with Twist of Fate to deal more damage and more damage earlier, and always 30 Insanity. Void Ray is your Mind Flay ticks, give you a 10% increased damage stacking for 4 seconds, and up to 5 stacks. This might be replaced soon, so I'm really not going to berate the points of like where Void Ray can be useful. I go into all these talents for like half an hour during the VOD you can watch if you want to go through all that stuff, but Void Ray might be gone soon, so who knows. A lot of the time, you're going to take Reaper of Souls all the time, or Void Lord. If executes matter, and you're executing a lot of things, and you can game Twist of Fate, Reaper of Souls is fantastic. Reaper of Souls also really works well with Surrender to Madness, because it gives you 90 Insanity per cast, which is just bonkers. Sand Lane, pretty straightforward. You get 20% more damage on your VT, and 20% more healing on your Vampiric Embrace. Easy passive. Auspicious Spirits is your shadowy apparitions to now deal 100% increased damage and generate 4 Insanity. So there is like gearing in both this and the next talent, Shadowy Insight. But remember, you gain apparitions off of your Shadow Word Pain or a chance on your VT crits. That's why haste and crit have it back and forth. Because Suspicious Spirits during sort of madness give you 12 insanity. Or 16? 12? 4, 8? Should be 16, I think, actually. And as you gain more and more crit and more haste, when your dodge tick faster and crit more often, you get more spirits that do double damage and give you insanity. But you can take Shadowy Insight, which is, again, the same thing with ticking dots. Shadow Word Pain periodic ticks have a 10% chance to reset the cooldown of your Mind Blast, and your next Mind Blast is then also instant. But if you're cross-dotting things, it may also proc more often, because you have more Shadow Word Pains out there. So you, bam, free, instant cast, off the global cooldown. You get the global cooldown from the cast, but when you get more and more haste, the global cooldown gets so low, those instant casts here is actually saving you a global cooldown, because if you cast the spell, you incur it, right? But if you instantly cast it, all you get is the 0.66, if you have tons of haste. Because it's so much quicker on instant cast. So people are talking about how, like, Sand Lane is good for questing, PvP. Auspicious Spirits will be good for, like, crit building and, like, different gearing, depending on your gear level. And Shadowy Insight might also be good in the same respect, depending on the encounter. So these are both possibilities for both of you to take. They're both really good in different situations. Shadow Crash is your attempt at giving you an extra AoE ability. It looks cool, but it's just too weak. It does AoE damage, 30-second cooldown, 40-yard range, gives you 15 insanity when you cast the spell. The damage, though, is, like, not fantastic. The suggestions were that it should give you more insanity for more targets you actually hit. Like 5 per target hit. So if you use it on a bunch of targets, it'll give you more insanity. But who knows? Power Infusion is a personal cooldown, 2-minute cooldown, 20-second duration, 25% increased haste, and 25% increased sanity generation. But not that great overall compared to Mindbender, which gives you a 1-minute cooldown. Mindbender replaces Shadow Fiend. It auto-attacks 1.5 second global with increases by haste. The more haste you have, the faster auto-attacks. 5 insanity each time the Mindbender attacks. Mindbender may be set and forget, because Mindbender, after you Void Torrent, like you put up Mindbender and then you Void Torrent at low insanity, and because you're holding your insanity for 4 seconds, you're gaining 5 insanity each time your very, very fast auto-attacking Mindbender attacks. And then if you disperse after that too, if you want to game the dispersion mechanic, you can Void Torrent and then Dispersion while your Mindbender's attacking to refill your insanity bar all the way up, which can be crazy. I will show off sort of the madness, of course, once in this video. Legacy of the Void makes your Voidform activatable anytime you're above 60, which I was told this only really helps with, because you had 100 insanity, the moment you, like, cast your first Void Bolt, because you immediately cast Void Bolt when you go insane, you overcap sometimes, but you waste generation. What Legacy of the Void means that you can probably go into your Void form around, like, 80 to 90 now, healthily, words Addon, because you don't want to overcap. Right there, you're like, I didn't overcap and waste my insanity gain, which is very beneficial. So that's why Legacy of the Void, it also gives you more chances to go in to Void form. It does have a synergy with Voidlord, of course, but that's up to you. It also gives you, the situational thing is that you can go into it more often, because if fights demand it, then you can use it. Mind Spike is kind of blah. Deals Shadow damage, Shadow Frost damage, replaces Mind Flay, and you can stack 10 debuffs, and then your Mind Blast explodes them for 200% of their original damage. This is a snapshotting ability that the damage of the Mind Spike is what is stored. It's 5 insanity per attack. But it's okay. It's a cast time ability if you like it or not. But Mind Spike it's alright. It's not ridiculous, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. But now, at the end of this video, I will show off one Surrender to Madness before we wrap this up here. I was told that on my testing, I didn't do too bad. I actually lasted a pretty long time during Surrender to Madness. Based on testing, the amount of time you can stay in Surrender to Madness without being able to execute something with Reaper of Souls is not very long. About 70 stacks or so. I'm taking Fortress just to help the propagation of staying in Surrender to Madness. And let's see if I can get this right. So I'm going to kind of like just game the system here and try to stay in this Voidform. Let's do it, team. So, dots are up. Surrender to Madness is going. That's the buff you're seeing on my form right there. Stacking it up, stacking it up, stacking it up. Alright, we're doing okay so far. I don't want to use Mindbender until I'm above, like, 50 stacks. Okay. Getting a little hairy. Not too bad, though. We're at 40. I might just panic Void Torrent here in a moment. Because I don't think it's going to work. Yeah. I should have... As I said it, I should have Void Torrented. See? The spell is so much fun. It's really good if you know how to do it. You want to get your Mindbender out around 50 or so stacks, and then immediately Void Torrent to fill yourself back up again. And then you have to just go for it with, how many stacks did I get? Only 46? Nah, I got a lot more during the stream. I was also using Shadowed Void to snap up a lot of insanity, so maybe that's why I stayed longer. But you get about 70 stacks on average without being able to execute people with Shadow Death. But I messed it up, but that's how it works. If you mess it up, you're dead, and you cannot be res for 3 minutes. When you hit Surrender to Madness, you cannot be res for 3 minutes after even you die. But all that happens is that you get 200% more insanity generation, and you can cast while moving until you exit Voidform. So the whole reason why you do this is to stay in Voidform a very long time. I'm being told, theoretically, later in the expansion, you might be able to stay for an entire 3 minutes, maybe. The insanity generation you deal can keep up with the drain, because the actual drain at 100 stacks caps at 57.5 per second of drain. The drain for your insanity is based on, it's like an energy regeneration system. So it continuously drains. It's not like a tick-based thing. There's like decimals, and there's a gigantic, you can look at the notes below for the actual amount, but there's a cap on it. So if you actually get to 100 stacks, and you use Mindbender and your, the alternate way to do it is use Mindbender and Void Torrent early, and then like a minute later when they come off cooldown together, you use them again. And that's how you can stay even longer in the Surrender to Madness Voidform state. But oh my goodness, the Shadow Priest is a lot of fun. Video description box below for the VOD, my notes, all that good stuff down there. Ways to support my channel and keep me doing what I'm doing. Thank you all so much for watching. Hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to see more of these in the future. Leave me your weirdest old god comments below. And tell me how much you love Surrender to Madness. And I will see you all in the next Legion testing video. Whew, I need a nap.